Welcome to Litodio, Book in Minutes, Insights for Life. In this episode, we're discussing a book that's been a life changer for millions, Untamed by Glennon Doyle. If you've ever felt like you're living according to someone else's rules, whether it's in your relationships, career, or even in your own mind, this book will speak directly to you. It's a powerful reminder that we all have the capacity to break free from societal expectations and live a life that's true to who we really are. In today's fast-paced world, we're constantly balancing external pressures with our personal dreams, often feeling trapped in routines that don't truly fulfill us. Untamed is more than just a book. It's a guide to rediscovering your inner voice and living courageously. Glennon Doyle shares her personal journey in a way that feels deeply relatable, encouraging us to rethink what it means to be tamed and how we can reclaim our own wild, untamed selves. Here's what you can expect in this episode. Introduction to the book. We'll start with a look at why Untamed is so relevant today and how Glennon Doyle's powerful storytelling invites us to question the status quo. Chapter by chapter run-through, we'll walk you through the key stories and lessons from each chapter, sharing how Doyle's insights can be applied to your everyday life. Key takeaways. Finally, we'll wrap up with practical, thought-provoking lessons from the book that you can carry with you long after this episode ends. So, whether you're looking for a spark to shake things up or a fresh perspective on what it means to live authentically, stick around. Untamed might just be the inspiration you need to unleash your truest self. Let's get started. Untamed by Glennon Doyle is a powerful memoir and self-help book that explores themes of identity, self-discovery, love, and personal freedom. Through raw and honest storytelling, Doyle shares her journey of breaking free from societal expectations and embracing her true self. This journey was sparked by her realization that she was living a life that wasn't truly hers, a life constrained by society's taming influences such as gender roles, family expectations, and traditional beliefs about love and happiness. The book was written during a time of profound transformation for Doyle, particularly as she embraced her sexuality, divorced her husband, and started a new chapter with her now-wife, Abby Wambach. Doyle's experiences encourage readers to reflect on their own lives and ask, "What would I do if I weren't afraid?" Her story invites readers to challenge the status quo and discover the strength to pursue their most authentic selves. Untamed has resonated with readers worldwide, inspiring millions to break free from their own constraints and live more courageously. Doyle's voice, empathetic, wise, and unapologetically real, has made Untamed a landmark book for those seeking to embrace their true selves and redefine what it means to be tamed. Untamed has a unique structure where Glennon Doyle uses a blend of storytelling, reflection, and insight to walk us through her journey. Here's a breakdown of each chapter and what makes each one resonate deeply. 1. Cheetah. This chapter opens with Doyle recounting a visit to a zoo where she sees a cheetah running in a contained area. The cheetah is meant to illustrate how powerful and wild animals, just like people, can be domesticated or tamed. Doyle reflects on her own life, realizing she's felt like that cheetah, contained by society's expectations. The metaphor sets the tone for the book, how we can recognize when we're caged and start to reclaim our wild, untamed selves. 2. Knowing. Here, Doyle introduces the idea of tuning into your inner voice, or what she calls the knowing. She describes moments when she would quiet her mind and listen to herself deeply. This practice helped her uncover truths she had suppressed about her marriage, identity, and happiness. It's the first step toward getting in touch with what we truly want, outside of what others expect. 3. Racers. Doyle shares her experience of seeing her daughter run in a track race, doing her best to keep up even when exhausted. The story serves as a metaphor for perseverance and the importance of following our own pace. Doyle reflects on how we often pressure ourselves to keep up with societal races without considering if they align with our true desires. In this chapter, Doyle emphasizes the power of feeling our emotions, rather than avoiding or numbing them. She shares her own struggles with addiction and how she used substances to avoid pain. Doyle argues that pain is an important teacher, and rather than numbing ourselves, we should let ourselves feel fully to heal. 5. Deliverance. Doyle explores her journey of awakening to her sexuality and falling in love with Abby Wambach, a former soccer player. This moment of clarity was both terrifying and liberating as it defied everything she thought she knew about herself. She tells us about the relief and peace that came with embracing her true self, despite the upheaval it caused in her life. 6. Dragons. This chapter examines the stories we inherit from family and society, which Doyle likens to dragons we must confront. She encourages us to slay these dragons of limiting beliefs, things like gender roles, family expectations, and outdated norms, to reclaim our freedom. 7. Confession. Here, Doyle dives into the power of vulnerability and honesty, especially in relationships. She talks about how liberating it is to speak one's truth, even if it disrupts others. This chapter encourages us to step into our truth bravely, rather than conforming to what makes others comfortable. Girl gods. Doyle reflects on raising her daughters and wanting them to see themselves as powerful and whole, rather than limited by societal expectations. She stresses the importance of cultivating self-respect and self-worth in young girls and how mothers can model freedom and self-love. Devine Ericas. In this chapter, Doyle describes how, in her youth, she would adjust her personality based on others' expectations, specifically a friend named Erica. She encourages us to release the versions of ourselves we create to fit in or to be accepted. 10 Elmers. Doyle talks about feeling glued to past beliefs and systems that no longer serve her. She compares this process of unsticking ourselves to peeling away an outer shell to reveal our core, liberated self. 11. Island. This chapter uses the metaphor of creating an island as a place of personal sanctuary where Doyle builds her values, boundaries, and identity. The island is a space that represents her genuine beliefs, free from outside influences. 12. Doyle reflects on societal and familial ghosts, or inherited expectations and pressures. She learns to confront these ghosts, recognizing that they are echoes of the past that she doesn't need to carry forward. 13. Here, Doyle describes a powerful moment of realizing she's a wolf, wild, independent, and strong. This identity shift symbolizes Doyle's full embrace of her untamed self and the liberation that comes from it. Here's a rundown of the main takeaways from Untamed by Glennon Doyle. 1. Listen to your inner voice. Glennon calls this the knowing, that inner compass guiding us toward what feels right. She explains how easy it is to lose touch with this voice because we're so used to following what others want. One practical way she recommends reconnecting with it is by sitting in silence each day, just listening to what bubbles up. It sounds simple, but imagine how often we ignore that voice, pushing away our gut feelings to avoid rocking the boat. Example, think of a time when you felt an inner nudge about something, like taking a different path in life or speaking up in a relationship. Glennon's approach would say, trust that nudge, it's telling you something important. 2. Feel your feelings fully. This one hit home because Glennon emphasizes that we often numb ourselves, maybe with food, social media, or work, to avoid difficult emotions. But her take is that these feelings aren't bad, they're guideposts. She shares how, instead of burying pain, we should allow ourselves to sit with it, trusting that it'll pass. This mindset helps us process emotions instead of letting them fester. Example, imagine a rough breakup. Instead of jumping into distractions, what if we allowed ourselves to feel the sadness and learn from it? Glennon's advice here makes emotions seem less like obstacles and more like teachers. 3. Challenge societal taming. The metaphor of being a caged cheetah really captures how we conform to others' expectations. Glennon talks about all the roles we're supposed to play: perfect parent, partner, friend, and how these roles often make us feel like we're holding back our true selves. She encourages us to question which of these expectations are genuinely ours and which ones we've just inherited. Example, say you've always followed a particular career path because it's what your family expected, not what you genuinely love. Glennon's approach would be to ask, what would you do if you weren't afraid of disappointing others? It's about choosing authenticity over approval. 4. Redefine relationships with honesty. Glennon believes that authentic relationships require total honesty, even if it's uncomfortable. She describes her own journey of expressing her true self in relationships, which sometimes led to hard conversations and even loss. However, she explains that if we hide parts of ourselves to keep the peace, we're not truly connecting. Example, think of a friendship where you've held back because you're scared of judgment. Glennon's lesson here is to share that part of yourself, trusting that real friends will support who you really are. 5. Trust discomfort as a path to growth. Glennon suggests that true growth often comes from discomfort, not ease. She shares how facing her fears and stepping into uncomfortable situations, like acknowledging her sexuality and ending her marriage, helped her grow more than she ever thought possible. This means not avoiding discomfort but welcoming it as a sign you're expanding. Example, if you're contemplating a big change, like moving to a new city for a fresh start, but fear is holding you back, her advice would be, lean into that discomfort. It's telling you something exciting might be on the other side. 6. Create your own island of beliefs. Glennon talks about building her personal island, a space where only her core beliefs and values exist. This metaphor is about knowing what you stand for and letting that guide you, rather than bending to every expectation. It's a reminder to have firm boundaries, even when others disagree with or question our choices. Example, picture a friend pressuring you into something that doesn't align with your values, like taking on work that feels unethical. Glennon's approach would remind you to stay grounded on your island and prioritize your values over external validation. 7. Break free from past versions of yourself. We often hold on to versions of ourselves that we created to fit in or to please others, but Glennon emphasizes that shedding these versions is part of growing up. She argues that becoming untamed means letting go of outdated identities, even if it feels disorienting. Example, if you've always been the responsible one in your family but now want to take risks, her message is to leave that old label behind and redefine yourself on your own terms. 8. Redefine success by your own standards. Instead of measuring ourselves by society's idea of success, Glennon urges us to define success in a way that feels meaningful to us. She explains that traditional markers, like wealth, status, or approval, are external and often leave us unfulfilled. Success, she says, should feel like peace and alignment with our true values. Example, say you're chasing a promotion because it's the right step, but it doesn't excite you. Glennon's advice is to ask yourself, what would actually make me feel successful? It might look like a smaller role that gives you more creative freedom or work-life balance. 9. Accept the chaos of change. Glennon is realistic about the fact that change is messy and that trying to control it all the time is exhausting. She shares her own story of embracing change, acknowledging the difficulty and beauty in it. Her advice is to trust the chaos, seeing it as part of the journey toward a more authentic self. Example, if you're in the middle of a major life transition, like switching careers or ending a long-term relationship, her advice would be, let it be messy. Accept that the process of realignment is uncomfortable, but it's also where true growth happens. 10. Encourage self-love in the next generation. One of the most powerful takeaways is her approach to raising kids, especially daughters. Rather than teaching them to conform, Glennon models courage and self-respect, showing them that self-love and independence are worth any struggle. She believes that when we live freely, we inspire our children to do the same. Example, if you're a parent or mentor, instead of emphasizing perfection, her approach would be to encourage kids to listen to themselves and trust their inner voice, just as we're learning to do ourselves. Thanks for tuning in to Litodio. If you enjoyed this summary and want to keep expanding your reading list with quick, engaging insights, be sure to hit that follow button, subscribe, and share with friends who love books as much as you do. We'd love to hear what you thought of today's episode, so feel free to leave a comment. We'll link to the book in the description. Until next time, stay curious.